The low hum of the industrial espresso machine was my favorite sound in the world. It was the sound of success, of solvency, of a life I had built for myself, bean by painful bean. I was in the small back office of my coffee shop, staring at a spreadsheet that finally, after 5 long years, showed more black than red. That's when my phone buzzed, shattering the peace. The caller ID read, Harrison. My father. His voice, when I answered, was like warm honey laced with arsenic. Clara, sweetheart. We haven't seen you in ages. Your mother and I were thinking, a nice family dinner this weekend. At our place. An old, familiar knot tightened in my stomach. A family dinner was never just a dinner. It was a courtroom where I was always the defendant. But this time, I wasn't going to play on their turf. Actually, Dad, I said, my voice surprisingly steady, why don't you guys come to my place for a change? I'll order some pizza. We can keep it casual. There was a flicker of hesitation on his end, but he eventually agreed. As I hung up, a slow smile spread across my face. I had just invited my family into a trap, one of my own making. My name is Clara, I'm 32 years old, and I am the owner, founder, and chief everything officer of The Daily Grind, a coffee shop I built with my own blood, sweat, and a frankly unhealthy amount of caffeine. And I was about to serve my family a slice of reality that was colder than day-old pizza. To understand why, you have to understand the kingdom I grew up in, a split-level house in the Chicago suburbs where the lines of succession were drawn from day one. And I was never, ever in line for the throne. In the kingdom of Harrison and Genevieve, my older sister, Serafina, was the crown princess. She was born with a halo of golden hair and an innate ability to get whatever she wanted. I was, the other one. The quiet, observant court jester, there for utility, not for adoration. The difference was never subtle. For Serafina's 16th birthday, a gleaming white convertible appeared in our driveway, adorned with a giant red bow. My parents, Harrison and Genevieve, beamed as she squealed with delight. For my 16th birthday 6 months later, I got a lecture on fiscal responsibility and a crisp $10 bill. To start your savings, my father had said with a proud nod. I used it to buy a monthly bus pass so I could get to my after-school job at a greasy fast food joint. The bus reeked of stale cigarettes and damp wool, but it was my chariot to independence. They called it, building character. I called it what it was, a double standard carved in stone. Serafina's life was a curated collection of parental investments. Designer clothes from Abercrombie, private tennis lessons, and sun-drenched spring breaks in Cancun. I remember her coming home from a high school trip to Europe, casually dropping stories about seeing the Mona Lisa while I was scrubbing week-old grime off the fryer at work. My mother would listen, enraptured, saying how Serafina was destined for great things. Meanwhile, my straight A's were met with a simple, "That's nice, dear. Did you remember to take out the trash?" The message was clear, her potential was to be nurtured, mine was to be self-started. They were the investors in her future, and I was expected to be a self-funded startup with no hope of venture capital. The chasm between us widened into a canyon when college came around. My parents liquidated a stock portfolio they'd been nurturing for years to send Serafina to a prestigious private university in Boston. Her Instagram feed became a highlight reel of frat parties, weekend trips to Cape Cod, and designer dorm room decor. Her education was their proudest achievement. My education was my own problem to solve. I started at a local community college, my world confined to crowded lecture halls and the musty scent of the library. I worked 2 jobs, sometimes 3. By day, I was a barista at a campus coffee kiosk, my mornings a frantic dance of steamed milk and espresso shots. By night, I was a waitress at a 24-hour diner, surviving on stale coffee and the kindness of truckers who tipped well. I transferred to a state university in Illinois after 2 years, paying for it with a patchwork of small scholarships I'd hunted down myself and every dollar I'd managed to hoard. My living situation was a series of ever-worsening nightmares. Moldy apartments with landlords who vanished when the heat broke in January. Roommates who'd disappear overnight, leaving me to cover their share of the rent. While Serafina worried about what to wear to a formal, I worried about whether my power would be shut off. My emergency fund, stashed in a high-yield savings account, became my obsession. Every spare dollar, every $5 tip, went into it. It was my only safety net in a world where I was performing a high-wire act with no one waiting below. After graduation, holding a business degree that felt more like a receipt for 4 years of suffering, I looked at my savings. $15,000. It was a fortune to me, earned in $5 and $10 increments. It was also the seed of my future. I found a small, grimy storefront for lease in a neighborhood that was more up-and-coming than already there. The rent was low for a reason. The plumbing was a joke and the wiring was probably a fire hazard, but it had potential. I signed the lease and poured my entire life savings into it. The daily grind was born. Those first 2 years were a special kind of hell. I was the painter, the plumber, the electrician, the barista, and the janitor. I woke up at 4 a.m. to bake muffins and stayed until midnight scrubbing the floors, my body aching with a fatigue that went bone deep. I bought second-hand equipment, an ancient espresso machine that wheezed like a dying man and a grinder that sounded like a jet engine. There were days when I sold only 10 cups of coffee, and I'd sit in the empty shop, the weight of a potential failure pressing down on me so hard I could barely breathe. I lived on unsold pastries and black coffee, my apartment the tiny, drafty room above the shop. But slowly, painstakingly, things started to change. A local blogger gave me a glowing review. People started coming in for my signature lavender latte. The morning rush started getting longer. I hired my first employee, a college kid named Sam who was as passionate about coffee as I was. By year 3, we were profitable. By year 4, we were a neighborhood institution. By year 5, the daily grind wasn't just a business, it was a living, breathing thing, a testament to every sleepless night, every sacrifice. It was mine. Naturally, the scent of my success drifted all the way to the suburbs. Suddenly, my family was interested. The phone calls from my mother, Genevieve, became more frequent. They always started the same way. "Clara, honey, we're so proud of you. The business is doing so well." Then came the pivot. "It's just. I'm so worried about your sister." Serafina, it turned out, was not doing so well. After graduating from her fancy Boston University, with a degree in art history she had no intention of ever using, she'd flitted between unpaid internships and short-lived projects. She was a freelance influencer, which was code for unemployed and living off our parents. She lived in a trendy, overpriced apartment in the city that my father was subsidizing. The hint started subtly. "Maybe you could hire Serafina to do your social media," my mother would suggest. Or my father would say, "Your sister is so creative. She just needs a little stability to find her footing." Then came the direct requests for money. It was never for Serafina, of course. It was always for them. "Clara, the property taxes are just killing us this year," my mother would sigh. "Harrison's car needs a new transmission, it's a few $1,000s. Like a fool, blinded by a flicker of familial duty I thought I still had, I'd send the money. I wanted to believe I was helping my parents, the people who, despite everything, had raised me. It took me far too long to see where the money was really going. The truth arrived not with a bang, but with a ping. It was 11 p.m. on a Tuesday. I was in my office, preparing the payroll, when an email from my mother popped into my inbox. I almost deleted it, assuming it was another passive-aggressive article about the importance of family. But the subject line caught my eye: "Plan for Serafina's future." My heart started to pound. This wasn't addressed to me. It was from my mother's account to my father's. She had accidentally CC'd my business email address. With trembling hands, I clicked it open. And there it was. My family's betrayal, laid out in cold, black and white text. It wasn't a suggestion. It was a strategy. A meticulously detailed plan to manipulate me into handing over my business to Serafina. Clara is doing well now, my mother had written. It's her responsibility to lift her sister up. Serafina deserves a fresh start, and the coffee shop is the perfect turnkey business for her. I felt the air leave my lungs. Turnkey. I wanted to scream. I had bled for this place. But it got worse. The email outlined their leverage, the ace up their sleeve. If she resists, the email continued, Harrison, you'll have to play hardball. We'll tell her we are reporting the daily grind for tax fraud. We can claim the money we've given Serafina over the years was an undeclared investment in Clara's business. The threat of an IRS audit and public ruin will be enough to make her see reason. She won't risk her reputation. I read it once. Then twice. The words swam before my eyes. The loans I had given my parents for bills and repairs, they were planning to twist it, to weaponize my own generosity against me. It was diabolical. It was evil. And for a moment, I felt the old, familiar despair wash over me. The desire to just give in, to make it stop. But then, something else rose up. A cold, hard anger. They hadn't just underestimated my generosity, they had fundamentally underestimated me. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I saved the email as a PDF. I printed 3 hard copies. And then I picked up my phone and called the one person I knew would see this not as a family drama, but as the corporate espionage it was. Mr. Reed, I said, my voice as calm and clear as a winter morning. It's Clara. I think we have a situation. If you've ever felt like you're fighting your battles alone, hit that like button to show some support. Let me know what city you're watching from in the comments below, it really helps the video reach more people. And don't forget to subscribe, because you're not going to want to miss how this ends. Thank you so much. Mr. Reed, my business lawyer, was a man in his late 60s with sharp eyes and a sharper mind. He'd helped me navigate the labyrinth of commercial leases and supplier contracts. He wasn't just my lawyer, he was my shield. I forwarded him the email. His response was swift, don't engage. Let them walk into the trap. It's cleaner that way. So I waited. And I prepared. When I invited them for that casual pizza dinner, it wasn't just an invitation, it was a summons. The night of the dinner, I set the stage with deliberate minimalism. No fine china, no home-cooked meal. Just stacks of pizza boxes on my granite countertop and cans of soda chilling in the fridge. This wasn't a performance of domesticity. It was a business meeting, and my apartment was the boardroom. They arrived precisely at 7. My father, Harrison, walked in with the unearned confidence of a king surveying his domain. My mother, Genevieve, wore a tight, pained smile, her eyes darting around my apartment, assessing its value. And Serafina drifted in behind them, already engrossed in her phone, radiating an aura of profound boredom. Clara, the place is lovely, my mother said, the compliment sounding like an accusation. Thanks. Pizza's on the counter, I replied, my tone deliberately flat. Then, the doorbell rang again. Oh, that must be my +1, I said brightly. I opened the door to reveal Mr. Reed, dressed in a sharp suit and carrying a leather briefcase. Everyone, this is Mr. Reed, a consultant I've been working with, I said, enjoying the flicker of confusion on their faces. He was in the neighborhood, so I invited him to join. They exchanged uneasy glances but shook his hand. The trap was set. The players were in position. The small talk over pepperoni pizza was excruciating. They talked about the weather, a neighbor's gaudy lawn decorations, anything to avoid the real reason they were there. I let them squirm, taking small bites of pizza and saying nothing. Finally, after an agonizing 20 minutes, my father cleared his throat, setting his paper plate down with a decisive thud. The trial was about to begin. "Clara," he started, adopting his deep, paternal voice, the one he used for delivering life lessons I'd had to learn on my own. "Your mother and I have been talking. We are so incredibly proud of what you've built with the coffee shop. Truly." I just stared at him, waiting. "But family has a duty to one another," he continued, his gaze hardening. "Serafina, she's been struggling. She needs a purpose. A stable career." My mother jumped in, her voice trembling with practiced emotion. "You owe your family this, Clara. After all the support we've given you." The sheer audacity of that statement almost made me laugh. "Support?" My father leaned forward, his voice dropping to a low, commanding tone. This was it. The moment of execution. "We've decided. You're going to sign the papers to transfer ownership of The Daily Grind to your sister. It's the right thing to do." He looked at me, expecting tears, arguments, a plea for mercy. He got none of it. I remained perfectly still, my expression unreadable. His face tightened with annoyance. He wasn't used to me not crumbling. He decided to play his final card. "Sign the business to your sister," he demanded, his voice now a low growl, "or we will report you for tax fraud. We will ruin you." To punctuate his threat, Serafina finally looked up from her phone, a cruel little smile playing on her lips. She leaned towards me and whispered, just loud enough for everyone to hear, "You're nothing without us." The air in the room went still and heavy. The three of them stared at me, a trinity of entitlement, their faces radiating smug certainty. They believed they had me cornered, that the fear of losing everything I had built would break me, just like it always had. They waited for the inevitable collapse. It never came. I glanced at Mr. Reed. He gave me a barely perceptible nod. I turned my gaze back to my family, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of them. I felt nothing but a cold, liberating pity. A slow smirk spread across my face, an expression they had never seen from me before. "The one who is nothing," I said, my voice quiet but cutting through the silence like a shard of glass, "isn't me." I reached for the slim manila folder I'd placed on the end table next to the couch. I slid it across the coffee table. It stopped right in front of my father. He looked at it, confused, then opened it. Inside was a single, neatly printed document. The email. The color drained from my mother's face. My father's jaw went slack as his eyes scanned the words, his own wife's words, detailing their conspiracy. Serafina just looked confused, her brain unable to process a scenario that wasn't going her way. Mr. Reed cleared his throat. The sound made all three of them jump. "I've taken the liberty of reviewing that document," he said, his tone conversational but laced with steel. "It's quite fascinating. Threatening to file a false report with the IRS to coerce someone into signing over a financial asset has a legal name. It's called extortion." He let the word hang in the air. "It's a federal offense. Carries a prison sentence of up to 20 years. He then turned his calm, professional gaze to my mother. "And filing a false report itself is perjury. Also a felony." The silence that followed was absolute. The smugness on their faces had evaporated, replaced by a pasty, slack-jawed panic. The hunters had become the hunted. My father opened and closed his mouth like a fish, but no sound came out. My mother looked like she was about to be physically ill. Serafina was finally, blessedly, speechless. The trap had snapped shut. They left without another word, stumbling out of my apartment like defeated soldiers. The war was over, but I knew I had to salt the earth to make sure nothing ever grew there again. My cousin, Priya, who had long been a silent sympathizer to my plight, gave me the final push. "Don't let them control the story, Clara," she texted me. "Burn it all down." So I did. I started simply. The next morning, I posted a photo on my personal Facebook page. It was a picture of me, smiling, holding a steaming cup of coffee in front of the daily grind, the morning sun glinting off the window. The caption was short, "Proud of every single brick I laid myself. This is mine." The comments were overwhelmingly positive. But then, as expected, the flying monkeys appeared. An aunt commented, "Family should always support each other. I'm sure your sister is proud too." A family friend added, "Don't forget who helped you get there." That was my cue. I didn't reply. Instead, I made a new post. It was just a single image, a clean, clear screenshot of my mother's email. I added no commentary, no angry tirade. Just a simple, devastating caption, just to clear up any misinformation. The explosion was immediate and spectacular. It was like dropping a match into a fireworks factory. Relatives who had always privately wondered about the family dynamics suddenly had their proof. Friends of my parents who had bought into their narrative of the struggling older daughter and the lucky younger one were silenced. The post was shared, screenshotted, and sent through the family grapevine at light speed. The court of public opinion had its evidence, and the verdict was brutal. Serafina, in a move of breathtaking delusion, tried to launch a counteroffensive. She created a GoFundMe page titled, "Help Me Rebuild My Stolen Dream." She painted herself as the victim, a creative soul whose brilliant business idea, my business, had been cruelly snatched away. It raised a grand total of $75 before the comments section turned into a roast. People posted screenshots of my email next to links of her old Instagram posts from lavish vacations. She deleted the page in less than 24 hours. The fallout from my parents was just as swift. My father, a man obsessed with his reputation at the local country club, was suddenly ostracized. My mother's social circle evaporated. They had built their world on a foundation of lies, and I had handed the world a sledgehammer. A few months passed. I heard through Priya that Serafina had finally been forced to get a job. I was at the mall one day, picking up some supplies, when I saw her. She was working behind the counter at a high-end clothing store, folding sweaters with a look of thunderous resentment on her face. Our eyes met for a fraction of a second across the polished floor. I saw no remorse in her eyes, only hatred. I felt nothing. I just turned and walked away. I blocked their numbers that same day. The silence was the sweetest sound I had ever heard. It's Sunday morning. I'm sitting on the small balcony of my apartment, a place that is mine, paid for by a business that is mine. The sun is warming my face, and the Chicago skyline glitters in the distance. In my hands is a warm mug filled with a dark roast from the daily grind. The aroma is rich and complex, the taste of hard work and survival. I lost a family. That's a hard thing to admit. There's a phantom limb where they used to be, an ache that sometimes surfaces on holidays or birthdays. But what I gained was so much more. I gained peace. I gained self-respect. I gained the quiet, unshakable knowledge that I am not, and never was, nothing. I am the one who survived. I am the one who built something that will last. And that first sip of coffee, in the quiet of my own home, tastes like freedom. They were my family, my own blood. Cutting them off completely was the hardest thing I've ever done, but also the most freeing. So tell me, was I wrong to expose them and walk away forever? Thank you for listening to my story. If you've ever dealt with a similar situation or just enjoy these kinds of stories, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you won't miss the next one. I'd love